There are 23 total monkeys in BTD6 right now, and each one of these monkeys has 3 different 5th tier upgrades. And it's really difficult to know which one is the best of the best. There's so many options to go for, but I think we need to know. We need to know which one is truly the best. So what I decided to make was a full bracket of all 69 towers combined together into one tournament. One-on-one battles until eventually there is only one tower left. The true king of kings, the best tower in the entire game right now. And the way we're going to decide this is from your guys' votes, but we also have 3 criteria that I want you guys to think about while you're voting. So let's go over the criteria really quickly, and then we'll jump into the tournament. The first of those criteria is the funness level. So how fun is that tower to play with? Because I think that's honestly the most important and deciding factor. Is it a fun tower to use? For example, if you absolutely hate Popp Awe ability because you have to micro him and move him around and do stuff like that, he would be a fairly unfun tower in your situation. But if you actually still enjoyed microing something like the Ray of Doom and you really liked playing with the Ray of Doom because it's fun that it goes through infinite balloons and all that stuff, then you would say the Ray of Doom is a fun tower to use. The second criteria is awesomeness. Ninja Kiwi's key thing that they say is always more awesomer, right? So which tower is more awesome in this situation? Think about the funness level, think about the awesomeness level, and whether or not that is a fun and awesome tower to use, and if it is, definitely vote for it. And the last criteria is going to be the price for its goodness, or what I call the efficiency. And what the efficiency is basically, of course, the Legend of the Night is going to be better than the Crossbow Master, but based on the amount of money that we spent on them, is it that much better? Is it truly 20 times better than this guy? So think about it in terms of not just how good it is, but how good it is for how much money you've spent on it. The next thing I'd like you guys to understand is how I wanted to make this fair. I wanted to make this a reasonably good tournament. I don't just want to throw down all the towers and have Spirit of the Forest and True Sun God, or Spirit of the Forest and Bloon Solver end up in round 1, because that would just be stupid. So I seeded these towers. I don't want to show you my top 10 or my top 15, because I think that might skew the results just maybe a little bit, but I'll show you guys some of the bottom ones here. And what I really tried to do was I just organized them a little bit. Top 10, 10 to 20, 30 to 40, 50 to 60, and then some of the worst towers, things that I thought that most people probably wouldn't end up enjoying, I put near the bottom here, not because they are bad towers, but because I don't think people would vote for them as their favorite towers or the best towers in the game. So don't feel like these guys cannot win at all. Of course, any of them can do it, and it's all based on your guys' votes. And just like that, a bracket is born. In round 1, we're going to eliminate 5. In round 2, we're going to eliminate 32. In round 3, we're going to eliminate 16, until eventually we're left with the final 2 towers of the entire game, and we must eliminate them to find out the best 5th tier tower in all of BTD6. This video has taken me absolute ages to make, and before I even get started, I just wanted to straight up ask. Press the like button, make sure you use the creator support code, it's SJB, and make sure you guys subscribe. I promise you, you won't regret it. This video is just that freaking good. That being said, let's get started in here. Our very first match for the day, we've got the Trade Empire versus the Bloon Crush. First, the Trade Empire. He's got a lot going for him. He's one of the most efficient moneymakers in the game. He can actually pop some balloons, even though he's designed to make you money. And he's got that automatic cam detection and lead popping power with Hot Shot that can mean he could pop almost every balloon type in the game. Unfortunately, he does require water to get going in here, and he doesn't pop that many balloons for what he is. And in addition, he requires 20 other merchant ships to be really efficient, and at least 10 to make sense. The Bloon Crush. His pros are that he slows down all the mobs to a freeze pace and actually sends them backwards in addition, which is really crazy. He's the best mob class stunner in all of BTD6, and he's easily buffed by primary expertise to make him just that much more powerful in an easy-to-do way. Unfortunately, he slows the balloons all to a freeze pace. That can actually be a bad thing. He's also got a weakish total pierce, so once we get down to balloons, he's not as effective. And he's got no cam detection, which is very unfortunate if you've got DDTs coming out. And the votes have been tallied. With 72 whopping % of the vote, the Trade Empire is going to come out on top. That money-making awesomeness is just what makes him come out on top. The Bloon Crush also, unfortunately, can be kind of a terrible tower to just watch the balloons infinitely get stunned forever if you don't have the right amount of popping power to keep them going. Next up, we've got the Energizer versus the Ultra Boost. The Energizer, of course, has quite a bit going for him. He pops balloons like crazy. He's actually very good at popping balloons in general. He powers up your heroes by leveling them up even faster, allowing your heroes to get to level 20 before the end of the game. In addition, he powers up land towers around him up to 20% of their ability cooldown, and also water monkeys by 50% of their cooldown. Unfortunately, he still requires water, so positioning can be difficult. He's expensive for the amount of balloons he actually pops, and he's absolutely useless if we unsubmerge him. What is the point of that? I don't know, but it is a thing. I don't know why it's a thing. And then we're talking about Ultra Boost, so he powers people up like crazy. He is, of course, one of the only towers or powers that actually does this, though, so he's sometimes just, unfortunately, needed if you're trying to go late game or something. Unfortunately, he also requires 10 abilities to power somebody up, and that means it takes time for that to happen. He doesn't pop balloons almost at all, as you can clearly see from the pop count here. And he's very expensive for what he does. And the votes have been tallied. With 71% of the vote, the Energizer is just the better tower. He doesn't require you to spend so much time leveling people up, and he also just does things by being a good overall support tower, affecting heroes, towers, and especially the water towers. I'll be honest, this is not a matchup that I want to talk about much. Everybody knows the Plasmonkey Fan Club is not fun to use, and yes, he can still be used. He's not an ineffective tower in this game, but I'm not even going to talk about his strengths or weaknesses right now. I'm just going to let you guys know that Plasmonkey Fan Club is not going to win this one. It's going to be a, I don't want to call it utter blowout, but an 83-17 vote. Cryp will come out on top of Plasmonkey Fan Club, and it's just the way it's got to be. Next up, we've got the Monkeynomics versus the Grandmaster Ninja. Of course, these guys can't be compared all that easily, but we can still think about it in terms of what's our favorite, what is good, and does it make sense to buy these things? And first of all, the Monkeynomics. Its pros are that it makes a lot of money. Like 10K all at once, then if you're really cool about it, you can actually get $12,500 plus $10,000 to make $22,500 all at once. But it's also very expensive, so getting this guy can be fairly difficult, and it also takes time to use these abilities, so it's more effective in the late game or by using stall tactics, which in my opinion, is still kind of a negative thing. The Grandmaster Ninja's pros are that it almost never misses. The Shinobi Shurikens will just kind of wrap around and hit the balloons and just make sure that it's getting the max popping power that it can out of itself. It also is pretty easily buffed, because you can buff it with a lot of things that can make it so much better, whether it's villages, alchemists, or overclocks on engineers. It can just be buffed in a lot of ways, which leads to the cons. It requires buffs to be good. If you don't buff it, he's actually a fairly ineffective tower overall as a 5th tier tower. And it requires a lot of shinobi tactics to actually get him to where you want to go. A full 20 shinobis to buff him to the proper good Grandmaster Ninja level. And of course, it's a no contest. With 85% of the vote, the Grandmaster Ninja is going to come out on top because, of course, he pops balloons and he's one of the most effective strategies in the game if you're willing to buff him that much. And the last battle in round 1 after this one tower gets eliminated will be down to our 64 final contestants. We've got the Ultra Juggernaut versus the Monkey Wall Street. So first of all, the Ultra Juggernaut, he's really good against balloons. That's kind of his thing. He pops balloons pretty well. So you can see on round 63, we're kind of dominating at this point. He also can throw things off of walls, which is kind of cool, but that leads us to the cons. There's not that many walls that are actually useful. He's also pretty bad against Moabs. The Monkey Wall Street makes us tons of money. I mean, that's obviously pretty cool. It also makes us lives, and you don't have to collect any of those dollars. It just makes it instantaneously, automatically, which also helps our micro a bit. But it does cost a lot of money, and even though it depends on circumstances, it's one of the least efficient 5th tier towers, or 5th tier farms, all things considered. And with over 16,000 votes, the Monkey Wall Street comes out on top with over 64% of the vote. Monkey Wall Street is going to eliminate the Ultra Jug. And now round 1 is over, and these 5 towers, they're gone forever. They will never make a comeback. They are officially gone. Thank you so much for competing in this Tournament of Champions, but you are not the winner. So let's give them a quick moment of silence so we can respect them in their goneness. And now that that's over, I want to make sure that you guys understand that you guys voted for this. This is all based on the community section and my Discord channel. So if you don't agree with any of this information, if you don't agree that these are the 5 worst towers in the game, make sure you are subscribed so you can get your votes in so we do not make any future mistakes and future wrongness on the Tournament of Champions. So subscribe and enjoy round 2. And now we start round 2. This is going to be a quick round because we already went over the Trade Empire in the first round, and it just basically makes you money. That's the point of it. On the other hand, the big plane. The point of this guy is not to make you money, but instead it's expensive, so that's actually a con. But the pros are that it pops almost everything. It's just a very powerful overall tower with infinite range that could pop everywhere. And of course, you guys thought this is no contest. Flying Fortress with 84% of the vote is going to win this one. Next up, we have the Sentry Champion versus the Gigasaur. So these guys are obviously both purple, which is kind of fun. Well, some of the only real purpley towers in the entire game, and of course they're going up against each other early because we can't have this much purple in existence. So let's go with the Sentry Champion, first of all. It's very well-rounded, so it's got no real major weaknesses overall. It just pops Bloons okay, it pops Moabs okay, and that's what makes it kind of a fun tower to have on the screen. Unfortunately, it also can get overwhelmed reasonably easily because it's pretty good against everything, but not amazing against anything. In addition, you have no control over these explosions or where the sentries go, so they can be a little bit of RNG. The Gigasaur, on the other hand, and yes, I'm calling him the Gigasaur, even though he's the Giganotosaurus or whatever, is very powerful against both Bloons and Moabs. He's got that going for him. In addition, he's got this really awesome ability for stunning pretty much everything, all over the place, for a pretty good amount of time. So he is very, very strong. But of course, he requires not only at least 4 beast handlers, but if you want to make him a little more powerful and a little more accurate, you're going to require a lot more than that, up to about 15 different beast handlers to be efficient with it, and that makes him sort of a struggle-licious tower to use. And the votes are in with 3/4 of the vote, 75% of the votes. The Sentry Champion is going to come out on top easily. Gigasaur is just too complicated to be in this game. Next up, we've got two of the most interesting towers in all of Bloons Tower Defense 6. We've got the True Sun God and the Glaive Lord going up against each other early on in this battle. So let's talk about these guys. First of all, the True Sun God. He is, if not the most powerful tower, very, 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 very close to the most powerful tower in the entirety of this game. But, of course, that's all you really need to say about him as far as pros go. The cons, though, are quite many. He requires so much knowledge, management, sacrifices, money, and know-how to actually get him to be as powerful as the amount of money you're spending on him. So he's not exactly easy to make happen, and that's where the Glaive Lord is just going to absolutely dominate because he's easy, he's been buffed many times over again, he has revolving glaives that absolutely shred anything below Oh My Gods. And he's amazing on maps with multiple areas of attack, specifically areas where you can get a lot of revolutions around him. But he is still terrible on the more difficult maps, and he's really bad against bad since Oh My God, so that definitely is going to hurt him quite a bit. So, in your votes, you voted for the Glaive Lord. 74% of the vote. The Glaive Lord, the king, popping out over the True Sun God. Unexpected for me, but you have to say it when it makes sense, man. He's just too expensive. You don't get to use him a lot, and even though he's a cool part of the game, it doesn't mean he's more efficient, more fun, or more amazing. Next up, we have the Popp Awe Mortar versus the Anti-Bloon Super Monkey. First of all, the Popp Awe. We gotta talk about how he just actually has a really cool stunning ability. This thing is pretty awesome to just stun almost all the Bloons on the screen for a fairly long period of time. In addition, he makes other mortars more powerful, especially the artillery batteries, so you can get some really cool bonuses out of them. And he's amazing against the Bloons, obviously. But that still requires us to use a lot of micro to make him good, and that can be at least somewhat unfortunate. In addition, because he powers up artillery batteries, you really have to use a very one-sided strategy to make this worthwhile at all, and that can be a little bit unfortunate for the artillery battery. Anti-Bloon, on the other hand, he's a little more simple. He popped Bloons really, really well. He also got no real weaknesses overall, and he's got this crazy awesome ability that can just insta-kill almost anything around him, which is just kind of crazy. Unfortunately, he is very expensive, and getting him in any real game is pretty tough, and the targeting is also kind of weird. Of course, that's 3rd and 4th tier based as well, but it's also kind of weird and hard to use completely properly in almost any game. And you guys voted for the Anti-Bloon with 66% of the vote. Still not a close battle. The Anti-Bloon's going to come out on top for his just absolutely devastating overall popping power. Oh, I absolutely love this matchup. We've got Superglue versus the Wizard Lord Phoenix. Let's talk about Wizard Lord Phoenix first. First of all, it has possibly the strongest ability in the game. I mean, check this thing out. It just blows out meteors everywhere, and you can double dip with both kind of abilities slash attacks going on at the exact same time. It's got a pretty continuous attack when you're not using it as well, so it is not like it's completely useless when you don't have this Super Phoenix out here. Unfortunately, it still doesn't have any purple popping power, which is really, really weird for a 5th tier tower. And of course, ability timing can be sort of difficult if you don't get it at the right time. Superglue, on the other hand, is amazingly effective at slowing down these Moabs, and decently effective at slowing down and popping the ceramics as well, but unfortunately it can get bogged down. As you can plainly see right now, it can get bogged down by just too many balloons right next to him if you don't have the right popping power at the right time, and that can be somewhat problematic. Also, deciding crosspath is fairly tricky. Do you want to go for something like Corrosive Glue to get more pops, or do you want to go for something that's actually going to hit more balloons, which will hopefully actually probably help you out more in the long run? So, what did you guys decide? With 62% of the vote, the Wizard Lord Phoenix is going to come out on top, but not as much of a blowout as I was expecting. So, good on you guys, man, for really deciding on these new and interesting upgraded towers. A fairly fun and completely different, unique matchup. This is what I live for. We've got the Elite Sniper versus the Bomb Blitz. So Elite Sniper is going to, first of all, make you money. So it's going to make you extra cash throughout the game, easily paying for himself in the long run, which is always a good thing. It, of course, gives elite targeting to all of your snipers, not just himself. And he is a fairly decent balloon popper, even though he's not amazing. The unfortunate thing is that the elite targeting isn't always better, so I don't know if that's really a good thing. And he's also not that great on chimps mode because you can't make any extra money. Bomb Blitz, on the other hand, he is a very good balloon popper, especially against the reinforced ceramics in the late game, which is kind of unique. He's not bad against Moab class balloons either, but of course not great against them. And he has a really cool ability when balloons actually sneak through his defense. He's able to destroy a lot of the balloons on the screen with his bomb storm ability. Of course, that ability requires you to lose lives, which is somewhat unfortunate, and sometimes it takes a lot of them for them to actually count and sneak through that defense. In addition, the cooldown is fairly long on the bomb storm, so it's not going to come back all the time. Did an absolute blowout. The Elite Sniper is going to come out on top with 79% of the vote. The Bomb Blitz just couldn't keep up. That ability just cannot keep him going here. It's too weird, too awkward to use, and honestly, usually there's better options. This has turned out to be a blood red battle here. We've got the Preemptive Strike versus the Ray of Doom. Both of these guys are very interesting towers in their own way. But of course, the Ray of Doom, I don't have that much to say about him because he just is a really, really, really powerful tower kind of all around. He doesn't really have any direct weaknesses, which is kind of difficult to say that. But he can solo all the way through round 100 on most maps if you end up getting a Ray of Doom and if you put him in the right spot and if you're willing to, unfortunately, micro. Micro is required to make him as powerful as he needs to be, and that can be difficult for some players to actually make happen. The Preemptive Strike, though, he's amazing against DDTs. One of the best DDT poppers in the entire game. He's also really good against Moabs and reinforced Moabs, which can be a fairly difficult thing to pop, specifically around 95. It's like the most amazing round 95 popper in the entire game. The ability is also really good against the Bad. The Bad is one of the toughest balloons in the entire game to pop, and when you're able to basically insta-kill the Bad by just using a couple abilities, that's kind of wild. Unfortunately, it isn't that useful in that many situations, so when you use this ability, it's good against the Bad, it's good in some situations, but not good in all situations. And it's also not that good against balloons like Zoma Gods or Round 98 when you got the biggest balloons in the game. And as expected, the Ray of Doom is going to come out on top, but not as great as I thought. With only 69% of the vote, the Ray of Doom will destroy the Preemptive Strike, wipe him out of this challenge completely. Ooh, what a matchup. We've got the Apache Prime versus the Megalodon. So these guys are both really interesting and both really good towers overall, but only one can win. So first of all, the Megalodon. Fantastic against Moabs. This is what he's designed for. Insta-killing things, just getting him out of the way. He's also pretty decent against the balloons as well, if you position him and target him properly. That being said, the Micro. The Micro is terrible, having to build up to 15 different beast handlers all over the place, making sure he's on strong, last, close, or first whenever you need him to be on this right targeting. And he's hard to use, man. Tough to use properly. Fetch Prime, full map control. That's awesome. Just leave him on pursuit, let him do his thing, and he could just do a good job. He's really amazing against the Moabs, but still okay against the balloons. I'm not even going to leave that in a negative category. But he can get overwhelmed if you're on certain rounds, like round 98, for example, coughity cough. And he's not always a great combo tower. If you get the wrong towers to combine with him, they might be able to pop too many Moabs too quickly and actually get overwhelmed by the balloons kind of flowing through your defense. And with that being said, This is one of my least counted votes because I did it a little late, only about 1,000 votes here, but the Apache Prime easily came out on top. I'm going to let it run for a little longer, but at this point, we have a whopping 84% victory. I mean, that is not going to change, guys, long term. Usually, if they're close, I let them ride, but no way, Jose. 84-16. The Puakai is amazing at stalling DDTs, Zomigods, Moabs, and a ton of other Bloons. But of course, it requires a lot of micro and building up to 15 different beast handlers to make him super powerful, and that could be kind of painful and tricky to do. And in addition, he is not an all-time stopper of everything. He just stops most of the things, and you're gonna hope that he's gonna stop as much as you need. So, let's go to the vote. This one's a clear wipe with 84% of the vote. The Perma Brew is going to just absolutely dominate Puakai, and I think it makes sense. He's just too difficult to use. It's not that he's useless or not good, it's just too hard to use, where Perma Brew, just you throw him down and he does a good job. We are still going deep, still going strong on this challenge, and I just want to say thank you guys for continuing to watch. If you have not pressed that subscribe button yet, please do that right now. I really, really appreciate it. It keeps this channel going, and I'm hoping to hit 800k any day now. If not, by the time this video comes out, 800k, baby! Help me out, get me to 1 million at that point. Woo! That being said, we've got the Ark Mage versus the Zar Bomba. So, Ark Mage has got kind of a lot going for him. He's very good against Moabs. He's decent against Bloons. He's also very easily buffable by getting an Alchemist, an Overclock, or even just a Village to buff him, because he does a lot of pierce and a lot of damage, and adding to that bonus is always just kind of a good thing. Unfortunately, he is easily overwhelmed. A lot of Super Ceramics or a lot of Bloons that aren't cleaned up by something else can overwhelm this guy fairly easily. Even though he's okay against them, it does take some time and can just get over his head very, very quickly. The Zar Bomba, on the other hand, has an amazingly powerful ability. That is his one pro. Look at this ability. Kablamo. It's amazingly, amazingly good. But unfortunately, his regular attack kind of sucks. It's not good against ceramics or super ceramics or anything, and he's just kind of a one-trick pony. After you use that ability, he's kind of useless after that, so it is what it is. Let's see what you guys vote for. Oh, with 89% of the vote. I believe that might be the largest vote discrepancy yet. The Zar Bomba is completely deleted off the screen, and Ark Mage is going to come out on top. Almost 9 out of 10 of you agree Ark Mage is just that good, or Zar Bomba is just that bad. Well, this is a really cool matchup. I actually really like this one. I'm curious to see where you guys are going to take it. So first of all, we've got the Crossbow Master, who's got a lot of cool things going for him. First of all, he's got all types of Bloon popping power, especially for the price. That is really, really cool. He's fairly cheap, so you can get him early on in the game and just have everything that you're going to ever need for a while. Unfortunately, he falls off in the late game, and he can get overwhelmed fairly easily on these, fairly large, beefy rounds like this. Super Malestrom, on the other hand, is very powerful overall with its activated ability. It does a lot of damage to Moabs, ceramics, and everything. And the cooldown is pretty quick, so you can sometimes use it even multiple times per round, but as you can plainly see right now, is not that great against Super Ceramics, and it also can't hit DDTs anymore. It can still get overwhelmed by a lot of Bloons, so it doesn't have all that many use cases where it's just, like, amazing instead of just sort of useful. And of course, with 85% of the vote, the Crossbow Master is gonna just straight up come out on top, completely stomping on the Super Malestrom, just deleting him from existence in BTD6 entirely. Super Malestrom, you are garb to me now. Next up, we've got the Energizer versus the Carpet of Spikes. Now, these guys are both obviously very interesting towers. Don't forget the Energizer we talked about earlier today. He does power up your heroes, water towers a lot, and then, of course, still can affect other towers' abilities that are land towers as well. Just kind of cool. Of course, his weaknesses are the fact that he still has to be put in water, and he's not that great when he's unsubmerged. Carpet of Spikes, though, on the other hand, is pretty gosh darn amazing against Moabs, and super duper amazing against DDTs. He's still kind of okay against the Bloons, too, which is kind of weird for such a good Moab popper. And the negatives about him are that he can get overwhelmed by a lot of Bloons at once, and of course you don't get to control both abilities at once. You kind of have to, like, just let it kind of flow naturally, which can be kind of unfortunate with certain timings. And with overwhelming superiority, the Carpet of Spikes with 82% of the vote is going to just knock out that Energizer. It just couldn't keep up with those bonuses in play. Next up, we've got a fairly interesting set of towers. We've got the Banana Central going up against the Homeland Defense. Now, neither of these guys are really Bloon poppers, so it's kind of up to you to decide on which one you think is better, but Homeland Defense powers up every tower on the screen by a lot. It only lasts 20 seconds, though, so you know, timing that can be a little difficult to do. Banana Central makes tons of money. And he helps make other 4th-tier banana farms around him make extra money as well. And the only real issue is that he is super expensive. He's over 100 grand right here, and he could really only be used as like a super late-game tower. So the votes have came in, and in my first very almost jaw-opening surprise here, Homeland defense actually got knocked out. Banana Central with 68% of the vote. Crazy! I mean, of course, it's a money-making machine, but Homeland defense is actually usable in a lot of real games and could actually be super effective for popping a lot of balloons. So, hey, it is what it is. And I gotta follow the votes. Ooh, one of our tightest races yet. We've got the Permacharge versus the Sub Commander. So Permacharge has a pretty decent regular attack here, but it's really all about his ability. His ability is unbelievably powerful and can straight up like annihilate almost any amount of balloons on the screen unless you're getting absolutely crazy. For a cheapish tower, that is good. Sub Commander, on the other hand, he is not unbelievably powerful by himself, but he is super powerful as a sub-commander. He's going to command all of the other subs on the screen and give them a bunch of bonuses. So that's really what he's got going for him, is the bonuses aspect of this guy. He still falls off a little bit in the late game, but don't get me wrong, if you get enough subs, he can still end up being a powerhouse. And the votes have been tallied with 53% of the vote, and I had to let this run for a while. I had to let it run overnight because it was so close. The sub-commander is going to come out on top with 53% of the vote, annihilating, well, barely annihilating. Is that a thing? Barely roughing up the Permacharge here, but still knocking him out of this challenge. Now, we've seen these guys before. Well, this guy before. The Grandmaster Ninja. What he's got going for him is that he shoots really quickly. He barely ever misses. He's got a decent amount of popping power, but you are almost required to buff him with both Alchemist and Ninjas to make him a good addition to your team. Spirit of the Forest, on the other hand, is just crazy powerful all around. The longer the map, the more he's going to pop balloons by everything on the screen. He's got a crazy ability here that can blow up and kill quite a few things, even though it kind of deletes it for a little while. And he makes you money, which I think is the most key aspect of his awesomeness. He can basically pay for himself by the end of the game in a lot of situations. The negatives are that he is too good. There's really not very many negatives about the Spirit of the Forest. He's a little bit weak against DDTs if you don't go top path. And of course, on the shorter maps, he cannot quite be that effective. And the lack of negatives for Spirit of the Forest is just going to wipe out Grandmaster Ninja. He only got 13% of the votes, leaving 87% of the votes for Spirit of the Forest. Still one of the kings of towers in this game. He is a beast. Whew, baby, this is getting to a long video here, but we got Grand Sabo versus Total Transformation, and these guys are both really interesting. Grand Sabo because he can eliminate a lot of health on a lot of these big balloons very, very quickly, but he is very ability-oriented. He doesn't do much popping power as a regular tower here, even if you buy crosspaths and everything, he's just not going to do much. But his ability allows him to get tons of pops very, very quickly on all the biggest balloons coming out against you in the entire game here. Total Transformation, on the other hand, is kind of the same way. He doesn't really do much as a regular attack. It's all about that ability, and you have to use that ability correctly. Unfortunately, using that ability correctly is fairly difficult to do, and that's what makes him a somewhat unfortunate tower to use in a lot of situations, and ends up on a lot of really bad lists for BTD6. People just don't like this tower at all. So let's compare them. With a whopping 80% of the vote, Grand Sabo is going to knock out Total Transformation so easily. He's gone. Get out of here, man. Oh, man, my nips are getting kind of cold right now. Oh, wait, we're live. Oh, okay, it's Ice Tower time. We've got the Super Brittle versus the Primary Expertise. So these guys are both very interesting towers. First of all, the Super Brittle, he does decamoization aspects, which is really cool. He does tons of support damage, allowing your other towers to just do more. In addition, he's pretty great against the balloons. If you have anything low, he's going to freeze them, keep them on the screen, allow your other towers to do more damage. If not, just explode everything all at once all around him. Unfortunately, he's got a very small range. I'm even getting buffed by the Primary Expertise right now, and you can see how small this range is. On top of that, he's fairly difficult to use on a lot of maps because of that small range, and because of the attack speed not being all that quick, unless you get the Enhanced Freeze instead of the larger range, which is also somewhat unfortunate. Primary Expertise, on the other hand, has a very strong attack. It buffs all the primary monkeys, which there are a lot of good primary monkeys, and it gives first and second tier upgrades for free, which saves you a lot of money on those towers. It can definitely miss, though, which is a bit of a weak part. You can see him just kind of running through and hitting the wrong balloons. The bounce can kind of not work properly sometimes, and that can be kind of terrible. In addition, late game, his attack does get a little bit weaker against the bigger and stronger balloons, especially the Moabs, BFBs, and so my gods. And the results are in with 62% of the vote. The primary expertise is just going to poop on the Super Brittle's face. I am so sorry, Super Brittle, but you are full of poop now. Next up, we got the fast-shooting monsters, the Sky Shredder versus the Elite Defender. So the Sky Shredder is obviously good against both Moabs and Bloons. In addition, he's got that infinite range and that pretty quick attack speed, which is all good things here, but he wastes a lot of his popping power. If you don't get the right positioning at the right time, he could definitely waste it and become sort of a squanderer of total awesomeness for your team, which is kind of sad to see. And on top of that, positioning can be sort of difficult, because if you don't get him in the right spot, all that defense is just, again, wasted. Elite Defender, on the other hand, is extremely cheap, which is kind of the main thing leading you to want to get him. He's so cheap that he's a good mid-game tower. He can just help you defend a lot of the early game and mid-game stuff, allowing you to get those good, beefy towers for the late game to actually keep yourself going. He's also got that infinite range, which is awesome. But unfortunately, he does fall off late game, so if you don't get other towers to support him, he is going to start to get kind of weak, and he lacks DDT and lead popping power. Another surprise for me, even though I am a pretty big fan of the Sky Shredder, the Elite Defender has come out on top with a pretty significant win, a 59 to 41% win. Elite Defender on top. Wow, Sky Shredder eliminated in round 1. Next up, we've got the extra large trap versus the Comanche Commander. So the extra large trap is obviously going to give you extra money. So that is one of the most awesome things about him, is extra cash is always a good thing when playing BTD6. Allows you to buy a lot of extra stuff. It can take down tons upon tons of huge balloons. But if it misses, it sucks. It has 0 bad pop power, and you do need to actively collect those traps. Those are all things that are somewhat difficult to do in every situation. Comanche Commander has been buffed quite a bit recently, which makes him more and more powerful. The Moab missiles are actually pretty awesome, and you've got a pretty good amount of Moab slowdown as well. Unfortunately, he gets overwhelmed fairly easily, and his overall balloon pop power is not that great for the amount of money you're spending on him. You do have to rely on more of damage-doing towers around him to do all the damage. And with 64% of the vote, the extra large trap will knock out the Comanche Commander. Does he deserve it? I don't know, but according to you guys, he does. The Inferno Ring versus the Moab Eliminator. Both primary monkeys, fairly similar in the way that they work against each other, and we gotta talk about them. So Inferno Ring does tons of fiery damage, kind of across the board. He just does a good job. He's got a purple weakness, but that doesn't really matter much. He's easily buffed by both the Village and the Alchemist and other towers, and he's got a Meteor that shoots out. You can easily see it going against these balloons here that does tons of damage against the biggest balloons in the game. Unfortunately, he's got that short-ish range, and he's sort of difficult to use on some of the tougher maps because they just don't end up getting enough range to get him to work in multiple spots. The Moab Eliminator, on the other hand, is amazing against the bad balloon. He's pretty good against Moab-class balloons as well, but he has almost no balloon popping power at all, and most of the damage comes from his ability. So if you don't have that ability ready to go, you might not be doing that much. In addition, it's quite an active ability. You gotta press it quite often because that cooldown is fairly short. And the votes are in with 82% of the vote. They said the Inferno Ring is gonna move on. Screw you, Moab Eliminator. You're not as good as this guy right here. He is a beast. Next up, another primary battle. We've got the Tac Zone versus the Absolute Zero. So the Tac Zone's got a ton of projectiles. In fact, I believe, if not the most projectiles, very close to the most projectiles coming out of any tower in the game. He's easily buffable, and he's very good against Moab-class balloons. Unfortunately, he can get overwhelmed quite easily. He pretty much requires those buffs to be good, and he lacks many types of popping power for a 5th tier, leads and camos, etc. The Absolute Zero, on the other hand, is amazing at slowing balloons down. You can see it in action right now. He's got a pretty cheap ability for slowing down both balloons and high-tier balloons, but the slow doesn't last that long against the big balloons, and is pretty ineffective against big balloons in general. It's just kind of tough to buy a 5th tier that doesn't really hurt these guys at all. And as expected, it's no contest. Even with all the nerfs the Tac Zone has gotten, he still ends up with 88% of the vote, just completely obliterating, shattering the Absolute Zero into millions of tiny, stupid pieces. Oh, this is an interesting one. We've got the Pod, or the Prince of Darkness, versus the Monkey Wall Street. Both of these guys are fairly interesting towers and don't work in the same way, away, but that doesn't matter. We still must have them fight. So the pod, first of all, decamos the balloons around him, which is pretty sweet. He can pop all types of balloons, so he has no direct weaknesses, and he's a very amazing cleanup tower. Unfortunately, as you've seen, it requires some buildup of this graveyard here to get him going, get him flowing in this game, and he's also really bad against just single targets like round 80 and 100. The Monkey Wall Street, on the other hand, we've talked about him earlier, but don't forget he makes a lot of money, makes lives, and we don't have to collect it. It just makes it happen. He costs a lot of money, though, and of course it depends on the circumstances, but he's one of the least efficient 5th tiers, all things considered. And another absolute annihilation with 82% of the vote. The pod will wipe out the Monkey Wall Street. Goodbye, my friend. Indeed, you are viewing that correctly. We've got the Bez, the Bloon Exclusion Zone, versus the Carrier Flagship. And I'm kind of upset these guys are going up against each other so early because I really like them both as towers. But Carrier Flagship has infinite range. He's got balloon-seeking planes flying around all over the place. He's got cool little landing pads that you can put towers on top of. Yes. Unfortunately, he can get overwhelmed pretty easily in the late game. And on top of that, he now lacks DT popping power, at least easily. The Bez. He is great against Moabs. He slows down ceramics quite a bit and pops them fairly easily, and he's quite easily buffable, which is quite nice. Sadly, though, he does not have any lead popping power, at least no easy way to get it, and targeting can get kind of tricky with target independent not always being the best targeting. And maybe recency bias, but Carrier Flagship got 73% of the vote, just blowing up the Bloon Exclusion Zone. We have not had any close battles in a while now. One tower has just been better than the other pretty much every time across the board, and that surprises me quite a bit. This is quite the interesting matchup. We've got the Super Mines versus the Master Bomber. So the Master Bomber is obviously really good against Moabs in general. He stalls balloons pretty well too, which are all positive things. Unfortunately, he does require a lot of Shinobis to be a good tower to work with. Otherwise, he does not get that attack speed necessary to be good as a 5th tier tower. And he also isn't as effective as you might imagine against something like a bad balloon, which is kind of weird, I guess. The Super Mines is super powerful. I don't know what else to say about it besides he just is very, very, very strong. He's one of the best late game towers in the entire game. On top of that, if you look at pop counts versus other towers, he just almost always wins. The unfortunate thing about him is that he is super expensive. One of the most expensive towers in the entire game, so getting him in any real game is not usually going to happen for you. And also, positioning can get kind of tricky. Do you put him in the front? Do you put him in the middle? Do you put him in the back? Like, where do you actually put him that's going to be the most effective? It's tricky to know what the best spot is. But with all that being said, the Super Mines is gotta win this one. With 68% of the vote, he's going to knock out the Master Bomber. Good job, Super Mines. Keep it flowing. Oh, this is an interesting one. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. We've got the Monkeyopolis, the banana farm maker of villages, kind of a weird tower, and we've got the Pirate Lord. So the Pirate Lord is obviously pretty strong. It's got a really cool insta-kill that can insta-kill a lot more than just one balloon at a time. 3 reinforced BFBs all in one ability, which is pretty cool. It also makes you extra money when insta-killing those insta-killing those balloons, and it's obviously still got a fairly strong regular attack here, which is quite awesome to say the least. But the problem is the ability cooldown is still reasonably long, so you don't get that many insta-kills every single time, and Super Ceramics can still be quite deadly in the late part of the game here. Monkeyopolis, on the other hand, makes tons of money. I mean, that's what it does. It's possibly the best money maker in the game, depending on how you want to look at things. But it takes a lot of work, a lot of know-how, and a lot of space to make it all happen, so even though that's not really a negative per se, it still is one of the worst things about the Monkeyopolis. And of course, Pirate Lord is just going to wipe Monkeyopolis off this planet. With 86% of the vote, the Pirate Lord is going to win, and that's why he's going to continue on. Next up, we've got the Special Poperations versus the Bloon Solver. So first of all, Bloon Solver, it's amazing against the balloons. There's really no weaknesses whatsoever. It's also pretty decent against Moab class balloons. Reinforced Moabs, BFBs, even Zoma Gods can get damaged by the Bloon Solver, though not quite as much. He's also pretty easily buffed by both the Elk and the Village, which is kind of weird for a glue gunner. But unfortunately, big balloons don't get hurt that much, so the bad or the reinforced Zoma Gods are the only thing that he's really kind of weak against, which aren't that common, I should mention. Special Preparations, on the other hand, it makes money and lives, which is pretty sweet. One of the only towers that can do that, so he's super unique. He moves towers around, which is kind of cool, giving you a lot of different options for ways to play the game. And in addition, He's got a solid Marine that he can just throw down that actually does tons of damage kind of all across the board. But because of that, he is micro-intensive. There's so much going on with him. You can move things, use abilities, get health, get lives. There's a lot going on, so he's fairly complicated to actually use properly. And also not as great on Chimps mode because the lives don't matter. And the money doesn't matter. And with the largest victory yet, and honestly, it's not that this guy is bad, it's that this guy is just too good. The Bloon Solver gets 93% of the vote. I know, absolutely insane. Ooh, we got a hot and cold battle here. The Icicle Impale versus the Avatar of Wrath. So the Icicle Impale slows DTTs down to an absolute halt, which is one of the only towers to do that easily. It also slows and damages mobs quite easily, which is awesome. But it is fairly useless against the bad Bloon, and it can still get overwhelmed reasonably easily if you don't have other towers that are still popping things. Avatar of Wrath is crazy powerful. He also ramps up his damage based on how many Bloons are on the screen. You can see that based on how angry he basically gets. But because of that, you kind of require a Druid army to get really, really good because all the Druids around him are going to buff him, and it requires even more buffs on top of that to be super solid and a really good addition to your team. With one of the closest battles yet, 53-47, the Icicle Impale will be the winner. Wow, that was a tight race, but I don't know, man. They're both good towers. They're hard to compare. Ooh, this is a really interesting one. We've got the biggest one versus the Moab Dom. So the biggest one, it's obviously got a huge freaking explosion radius here, which is pretty awesome. He's very, very powerful. And I don't even want to get into too specifics here because he's kind of almost mediocre against everything rather than very specifically good against Bloons or good against Moabs because he's kind of an all-around sort of tower here. Stuns Moabs, kills Bloons a little bit, kills Moabs a little bit. He's sort of a goofball 5th-tier tower, to be completely honest. His negatives are the fact that his range is actually almost too big. Figuring out exactly where to place him can be a little bit tricky. Seeing where the explosion actually hits to and what's getting shockwaved or exploded is kind of confusing, so it can be a little tricky to get him just in the exact right spot. He also isn't as good against the Bloons as you might imagine for a 5th-tier Bloon popping tower. You can see the reinforced Bloons are just kind of like walking through anyways, which is kind of goofy. But that's all I'm going to mention about him, because Moab Dom, ooh, he's amazing against Moab class Bloons, obviously. He's got a freaking huge range, hitting Moabs anywhere on the screen. But he's not great against Bloons, kind of his only major weakness. And he also, even though oddly enough, doesn't get talked about much, he doesn't get buffed all that well. So Alchemist doesn't work very much, and even if you get the primary expertise or something around him, it doesn't really buff him all that much, which is kind of weird for a primary monkey. For these votes, instead of going to you guys, I actually wanted to switch it up a little bit, and I went to the YouTubers. So I have this specific channel where basically the YouTubers can chat with each other if they want to, and I asked them if they could give me a quick vote here. And they decided in a 4-5 vote, an extremely close battle, that the Moab Dom was going to lose to the biggest one, and the biggest one is going to continue on here. Oh, here's a fun little combo. We got the Legend of the Night versus the Cripple Moab. So Cripple Moab obviously stalls Moabs. It's in his name. He also does, he allows your other towers to do bonus damage to the Moab class Bloons, making all of your other towers stronger, which is kind of cool. But that's kind of all he really does. He's not that great against Bloons, and of course you gotta leave him on strong here, so you need to make sure you're hitting the Moabs, otherwise hitting Bloons is just gonna be kind of worthless for you. In addition, I feel like the Shrapnel Shot is a much better cross path, so you're kind of limited in which way you can go with this guy. And lastly, he isn't that powerful against the Moabs himself. He's more of a support tower. He can do damage, don't get me wrong, but it's not like he's doing massive damage for a very high-priced 5th-tier tower here. Legend on the other hand is super duper powerful. He's crazy awesome. He's got a super awesome ability with if Bloons actually sneak through our defense, which I don't think we can make it even happen. He can make the lives not even sneak through at the end of the game, which is so unique and awesome. It's just kind of crazy. As far as weaknesses go, is expense a weakness? Because that's really the only thing he's got going against him right now. But oddly enough, expense is an issue. The Legend of the Night has been beaten in a 47-53% battle. The Cripple Moab will come out on top over the Legend of the Night in the biggest seed discrepancy that I've ever seen. I had seeded Legend of the Night as number 4 and Cripple Moab as 61. absolutely crazy and mind-boggling. Next up, we've got the Mad versus the Perma Spike. Now, the Mad is really, really interesting. He's a Moab popper at heart, and that's really all he does. He pops Moabs. In addition, he's got a pretty sweet ability here that can pop Moabs and surprisingly still pops some of the Bloons in here. But it's a generally sweet ability for already having a very, very powerful Moab attack. Unfortunately, he is bad against the Bloons. As a regular attack, it's actually quite horrible, and one of the only towers in the entire game that actually regresses to being less powerful than the 4th tier version when he upgrades to a 5th tier version against the Bloons in particular. Perma Spike, on the other hand, is exactly what you know he does. He sits in the back of the map and he pops Bloons, but he's a great frickin' job at it. Super amazing against CDTs and great against the bad Bloons as well around 100, allowing you to almost insta-kill the bad in most situations. Unfortunately, he can get overwhelmed reasonably easily with lots and lots of Bloons, so around 98, 94, 96, the tough big Bloon rounds, he can eventually get overwhelmed, and it takes time to build those up, so you know, it's kind of up to you on whether you're going to be able to handle the Bloons without the Perma Spike most of the time and only use them when you actually need them. And the Mad's got to win this one with 68% of the vote. The Perma Spike's just been nerfed too much, and the Mad is just too fantastic against the Moabs to pass him up. Ooh, I really like this as a combo. I'd rather them not go up against each other. I'd rather have them just be together as a combo, because they're just an interesting and good weirdo combo to use, I guess. But we've got the Bloon Incineration versus the Glue Storm. Bloon Incineration is one of those towers that decamoizes and defortifies the Bloons, especially the big Bloons, which not very many towers can do that. It does a surprising amount of overall damage. As you can plainly see here, we're actually melting quite a bit of Bloon action on top of this. But it's still weak against purples. The fire can actually get deleted by a single purple Bloon, around 95, coughity cough, and it's still somewhat micro-intensive, depending on if you find a excellent frickin' spot like this map to just put them down and have them do its job. Glue Storm, on the other hand, is actually going to glue a lot of the Bloons. It's actually going to last a pretty long time. Its cooldown is quite quick. It helps against DDTs, and it's quite cheap. But even though it's got a lot of those pros, it's got a weakness. It doesn't do any direct damage, or at least not much direct damage to these Bloons. And that means he's almost entirely a support tower, and you have to use him as a support tower the entire time, and some people might not like that. Also, almost all of his damage and all of his support is based on mostly his ability, so you're not getting much out of the actual gluage of the Glue Storm. And with a much more ridiculous spread than I thought, Bloon Incineration with 82% of the vote is going to completely annihilate the Glue Storm. I thought more people would like this guy, but he's still a glue gunner. Still got a problem, I guess. This is a wonderfully fun combo. We've got the Bloon Master Alchemist and the Superstorm. Possibly the best round 98 combo in the entire history of existence. These guys are just so good against this exact setup right now. So let's talk about their strengths and weaknesses real quick. First of all, we've got the Bloon Master Alchemist. He's amazing against the largest Bloons in the game. He insta-kills them down to red balloons, which means we, are going to lose out on money. That's kind of his only weakness. We lose it on money. When we pop a Oh My God down to a red balloon, we don't gain any of that money for all of those Bloons. It just disappears into nothingness. The Superstorm, it's possibly the best Bloon sendbacker in the entire game, if not like almost 100% the best Bloon sendbacker in the entire game, except for maybe True Sun God, and does a decent amount of damage as well. I mean, you can tell we're actually damaging a lot of these Bloons over here. Unfortunately, he can stall the Bloons. If you don't have the right popping power in the front of the game, he can stall the Bloons, making you actually take a long time to pop it, which can be quite unfun to deal with. In addition, he may require a bunch of other druids to kind of support him and power him up to make him actually reach his full potential. And it was a fairly close battle, but Bloon Master Alchemist is going to come out on top with 54% of the vote. Superstorm, I don't know. I don't really think either of these guys has a major issue. It's just one of them has to win. And Bloon Master Alchemist in this situation, he's just got that really awesome thing to do that nobody else can do. And now that round 2 is over, we are so excited to say that 32 monkeys are left in the entire game. That means 32 more monkeys have been deleted or eliminated from this tournament in round 2. A total of 37 monkeys have been eliminated in total. But that might be kind of sad, because some of your favorite monkeys may be in this bundle right here, and you're kind of sad to see them be eliminated so early on in this Tournament of Champions. So what can we do? Well, we can have a redemption arc possibility. The 5th tier tower with the most likes in a comment below in this video will be revived, brought back to life to fight again in round 3. but it's all up to you guys. Make sure you're voting for your favorite 5th tier tower. Make sure you vote for the 5th tier tower that deserves to have a comeback and get back in here for round number 3. And also, if you guys want to be so kind, press the like button on this video if you like the amount of effort that I put into it. Make sure you're subscribed so you can end up voting and contributing to this actual project that we're doing, the Tournament of Champions. And lastly, if you guys want to be so kind, make sure you head on over to BTD6. Make sure you click on over to the settings section here, click creator support code, and type in SJB. It helps me out so much, and you'll never know how much I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful and delicious day.